I stepped off the helicopter, ducking under the still spinning rotors. My boots hit dirt as the downwash flattened the tall grass around the landing spot. The pilot handed down my duffel and supply crates without a word. 3 months, he shouted over the engine. Radio check-in every morning at 8. Good luck. Before I could ask any questions, he was already lifting off. The helicopter turned quickly and disappeared over the treetops, leaving me in complete silence. The lookout tower was about 50 yards away, sitting on the highest spot on the ridge. It was 4 stories tall, with a cabin on top surrounded by windows. My home for the summer. The Forest Service paperwork called it Eagle Point Station. It didn't look like much. Old wood and metal supports, narrow stairs going around the outside. I hauled the first load up the stairs, legs burning by the 3rd landing. The key got stuck in the door before finally turning with a grinding click. The place smelled closed up, dust and old coffee and something like mouse droppings. The cabin was about 15 feet square, a desk against the windows facing north, small kitchen set up in one corner, narrow bed built into the wall, a metal stove for heat, map table in the center covered in charts with grid coordinates. I propped the door open to air the place out and made 3 more trips for my supplies. The last crate almost knocked me over when my boot caught on the top step. I grabbed the railing to steady myself and felt a rush of panic thinking about falling down all those stairs. No hospitals out here, no neighbors, no backup. The whole afternoon went by while I unpacked. I wiped down every surface, swept the floor, and tested the equipment. The radio made a crackling sound when I turned it on. Eagle Point Station, this is dispatch. Radio check, over. Dispatch, Eagle Point receiving. This is James Wilson reporting in. Welcome to your post, Wilson. Everything in order up there? I looked around at the bare bones setup. Yes, ma'am. All equipment functional. Good. Remember protocol. Morning check-in. Immediate report for any smoke sightings. Emergency channel always monitored. You've got the handbook? Yes, ma'am. Study it. Next supply drop in 10 days. Over and out. The radio went silent. I stood at the windows, looking at the view in all directions. Pine forests spread out everywhere. Mountains stood sharp and gray in the distance. Not another man-made structure in sight. I spent that evening memorizing the sector map, learning the names of peaks and valleys I'd be watching. The handbook had steps for everything from standard fire reporting to bear encounters. I tried not to think too much about the section on mental health during isolation. The bed felt wrong that first night. Too hard, too strange. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the tower creak in the wind, wondering what I'd gotten myself into. Morning light woke me. I made coffee on the small propane burner and carried it to the east windows. The forest looked different in the dawn light, less huge, more real. I did my radio check, then began the scheduled lookout routine. Every hour, I did a complete 360-degree check with binoculars. I wrote down weather conditions, visibility, and anything worth noting. Between checks, I read the station logs from previous seasons and arranged my few personal items. The routine helped me deal with being so alone. By mid-afternoon on the second day, I'd gotten used to the pattern. Check, log, wait. Check, log, wait. I was on the north side when movement caught my eye. Someone hiking up the narrow trail that led toward the tower. The person moved quickly, following the zigzagging path that went up the ridge. I checked my schedule. No visits planned, no supply drops, no maintenance. I watched the hiker through binoculars. Male, probably 30s, carrying a day pack. Tan jacket, dark pants. He stopped at one point to drink from a canteen, then kept going upward. 20 minutes later, I heard boots on the stairs. A knock followed. I opened the door to a man with 3 days' worth of stubble and a wide smile that didn't reach his eyes. Afternoon, he said, extending his hand. Stephen Miller. I work the Blacktail Ridge Station, about 8 miles northeast. I shook his hand. James Wilson. First season? He stepped past me into the cabin without waiting for an invitation. Yeah, just got dropped off yesterday. Stephen walked around the cabin, running his fingers over everything. He picked up my coffee mug, gave it a sniff, then put it back down. They give you the talk about isolation yet? How it messes with your head after a few weeks? It was in the handbook. He laughed, short and sharp. Handbook doesn't cover half of it. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. You married James? The question felt off, personal in a way that made my skin crawl. No. Girlfriend waiting back home? No one waiting. I moved to the map table, putting it between us. Is Blacktail Ridge manned year-round? Stephen ignored the question. You notice anything strange since you got here? Sounds at night? Shadows moving wrong? I kept my face neutral. Just got here yesterday. Haven't noticed much of anything yet. You will. His eyes darted to the windows, then back to me. There's something you should see. In the woods. About half a mile down the east slope. Won't take long. I can't leave my post. Protocols. He waved his hand dismissively. This is important. You need to understand what you're dealing with up here. I stepped back, bumping against the stove. I appreciate the welcome, but I've got observation rounds to complete. Maybe another time. Stephen moved closer, his smile way too wide. Have you heard her calling yet? Who? He took another step toward me. The air in the cabin got cold, even though the afternoon sun was coming through the windows. She finds all of us eventually. His voice dropped to a near whisper. Some fight it. Makes things worse. I reached behind me, hand closing around the metal poker leaning against the stove. I think you should go. Stephen stopped, his head tilting to one side. The sunlight hit his face differently, and for a moment his skin seemed to sag, with patches turning gray-green. His cheek looked sunken, jaw partially exposed through rotting flesh. I blinked, and his face was normal again, but his eyes had changed, flat and empty. You'll call when you hear her. He turned toward the door. They all do. Stephen stepped onto the landing outside. Without looking back, he went down the stairs and walked into the tree line, quickly disappearing among the pine trees. I closed the door and locked it. I locked the door and went for the radio. My hands weren't steady as I adjusted the frequency to the supervisor's channel. Eagle Point to dispatch. Come in. Over. Static crackled for a few seconds before a response came through. Dispatch receiving. Go ahead, Eagle Point. I just had an unexpected visitor at the tower. Man claiming to be from Blacktail Ridge Station. Stephen Miller. Something seemed off about him. A pause stretched longer than normal radio protocol would suggest. Eagle Point. There's no lookout currently assigned to Blacktail Ridge. That station is unmanned this season. My stomach tightened. He specifically said he worked there. Came into my tower asking strange questions. Can you describe this individual? Mid-30s, 3-day stubble, tan jacket, dark pants, carried a day pack. I hesitated, unsure whether to mention what I thought I'd seen, that momentary glimpse of something wrong with his face. He was asking personal questions, wanted me to follow him into the woods. Did you get a name? Stephen Miller. Another extended pause. Stay at your post, Wilson. We'll send rangers to check the area during regular rounds in 2 days. Keep your door secured until then. Copy that, over and out. I put the radio handset back on its hook. From the window, the tree line where Stephen had disappeared showed nothing unusual, just pine trees moving in the afternoon breeze. No movement, no sign anyone had been there at all. Hours dragged by. I went through the motions during observation shifts, writing down weather and visibility without really focusing. I kept thinking about that moment when Stephen's face had changed. A trick of the light, I told myself. Stress and being alone playing tricks on my mind. The handbook had warned about it. Evening came and I did another round of door checks and window tests, all secure. Dinner was just rations that tasted like nothing. I tried to read a paperback but couldn't focus. The words just blurred together on the page. At night, I could only see my reflection in the windows. I kept thinking I saw movement in the corners of my eyes, but it was just me when I turned to look. The tower made creaking noises as it got colder. Every sound made me tense up. Sleep wouldn't come. My bunk felt like concrete as I lay there fully clothed, staring up. Behind my eyelids was the image of Stephen's face, flesh sagging, patches turning that sickly gray-green, the jaw exposed through rotting skin. Every time I almost fell asleep, some noise would jerk me awake. Wood expanding or contracting, wind hitting the metal roof, branches scraping the lower supports. I kept checking my watch. 2:17 a.m., then 3:42, then 4:55. When morning came, I had a dull headache and gritty eyes. I made coffee stronger than usual, but it didn't help much as I watched the sun come up between the trees. The forest didn't look so scary in daylight. After 3 cups, I heard an engine coming toward the tower, a truck climbing up the service road that curved around the bottom of the ridge. Through my binoculars, I could see it was a Forest Service vehicle, moving slowly over the bumpy ground. The weekly supply delivery, right on schedule. 20 minutes later, boots thumped on the stairs. A sharp knock followed. "It's open," I called, keeping my distance from the door. Through the doorway stepped a man carrying a plastic crate, 60s, maybe older. Leathery skin creased into permanent squint lines. White hair cropped short under a Forest Service cap. The crate landed with a thud on the table. "Radio batteries and some fresh provisions," he said. "Nate Henderson. I run the supply route for this sector." A nod was all I could manage. "James Wilson." Nate took a long look at me, his eyes narrowing. "You all right, son? Look like you haven't slept." Long night. The coffee pot yielded another cup, which I offered him. He accepted with a quick nod. First week's always the hardest. Brain's gotta adjust to the quiet. The question sat on my tongue for several seconds before I let it out. "You been working these woods long?" 34 years. Coffee passed his lips, drew a grimace. Then he drank more anyway. "Know every ridge and valley in a 100-mile radius." "Ever hear of a lookout named Stephen Miller?" Nate's coffee mug stopped halfway to his mouth. His eyes shot to mine, then darted away. "Where'd you hear that name?" "He was here yesterday, or someone claiming to be him." The mug landed on the counter slowly. Nate ran a hand over his mouth, then walked to the windows, looking out at the forest. "That's not possible." "Why not?" He turned back with a serious look. "Stephen Miller worked this tower in '97, this exact station." I felt a chill. "And?" "Hung himself, right there." One finger pointed to the central beam running across the cabin ceiling. "July 12th, 1997. My body went still. Coffee forgotten. There must be some mistake. I spoke to him yesterday." "No mistake. I was on the recovery team. Found him myself." Nate approached the table, resting his palms flat against the wood. "What exactly did this visitor say to you?" The conversation replayed through my words while Nate's face got more worried with each detail. When I finished telling him everything, he pulled out a chair and dropped into it. "The official report cited isolation psychosis," he said, voice low. "Said he couldn't handle the solitude, started seeing and hearing things. But before his radio went silent, Stephen made some calls." Nate looked up at me. "Frantic calls. Said there was a woman in the woods. Said she wouldn't leave him alone. Kept appearing at the windows, calling his name." My mouth got super dry. "Did anyone investigate?" "We searched for days. Never found any sign of anyone else up here." His jaw made a scratching sound as he rubbed it. "But I've been in these forests long enough to know there are things the reports don't explain." things that don't fit into neat categories. Silence filled the space between us. Outside, a raven called, sudden and sharp. Nate pushed to his feet. I should get going. 3 more drops today before sundown. My legs carried me to the door behind him. What should I do if he comes back? Or if I see anyone else? At the doorway, Nate stopped. Keep your door locked. Keep your radio close. His voice got quiet. And if you see that woman, don't answer if she calls your name. He looked toward the forest beyond the tower. She's still out there. Has been for years. With that, he went down the stairs. He moved slowly as he returned to his truck. The engine started and the vehicle disappeared among the trees as it drove down the service road. The door closed with a click of the lock, leaving me alone with the knowledge that whatever had visited me yesterday couldn't be Stephen Miller. I woke up suddenly at 3:17 a.m. There was a scraping sound from overhead, like something heavy being dragged across the wooden ceiling. I looked at my watch glowing in the dark as I sat up, trying to figure out what I was hearing. Then I saw it. A rope noose was hanging from the middle beam, the same one Nate had pointed out earlier. It was moving slightly, even though there wasn't any wind in the cabin. The moonlight showed every twist of the carefully tied knot. My back slammed against the wall. I knocked over the chair as I scrambled away. The noose kept moving back and forth in the quiet room. I grabbed my backpack from beside the bed and stuffed the radio and my flashlight inside. No way was I staying in that cabin, not with that thing hanging there. I could barely stand on the stairs. I went down 3 flights in the dark, my hands hitting the wooden railings, my boots missing steps. The forest around the tower seemed different at night. The trees looked closer together, and the spaces between them were completely dark. I ran. No direction, no plan. Just away from the tower, away from that noose that couldn't be there but was. Branches hit my face. I tripped on roots. I crashed through bushes until my lungs hurt and my throat felt raw. The ground went downhill and I followed it, half running, half falling until I splashed into water. Whisper Creek. Had to be. The map showed it running through this area about a mile from the tower. I bent over with my hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath. The water bubbled over rocks with bits of moonlight reflecting off it. Once my breathing slowed, I could hear more than just myself gasping. That's when I saw her. She stood downstream, ankle deep in the creek. Long, dark hair hung past her waist. Her dress, or what looked like a dress, moved around her legs even though the night air was completely still. Her skin wasn't just pale, it was white, the kind of white that reminded me of bone. Hello? My voice cracked on the word. Her head turned toward me, then kept turning, too far, at an angle no neck should bend. She made no sound, just watched with eyes I couldn't quite see from that distance. I pulled the radio from my backpack. Not much of a weapon, but it felt good to hold something heavy. My flashlight lit up the dark as I walked along the bank. "Who are you?" I called, trying to steady my voice. "Are you lost? Do you need help?" 20 yards separated us now. The light caught her eyes, which flashed yellow-green like a deer's, not reflecting light, producing it. "Did you enjoy my gift, James Wilson?" The words didn't match her mouth movements. Her voice sounded wrong, like 3 or 4 people speaking in near unison, slightly out of sync. "What gift?" I took another step forward, radio clutched tight. "The reminder hanging in your tower." Her lips barely moved. "The same choice awaits you." I edged closer, boots sliding on wet stones. "Who are—" She moved. One moment she stood yards away, the next she was 3 feet in front of me. No walking, no blur of motion, just there, then here. I stumbled backward, lost my footing on the slick rocks, and fell hard. The radio flew from my hand. My elbow smacked against stone, sending pain shooting up my arm. She leaned over me, her face now fully visible. Her features looked almost pretty, but something about them seemed off. I couldn't put my finger on it. They were too perfect, too still. Her eyes had no whites, just solid, reflective discs. "We'll speak again," the multi-voice said, "when you're ready to serve." I blinked, and she was gone. Not hiding. Gone. The spot where she'd stood was empty water, no ripples, no footprints on the muddy bank. I stayed on the ground, cradling my throbbing elbow, looking at the tree line and water. Nothing moved except the creek itself. The eastern sky had begun to lighten by the time I found my radio and flashlight. Gray replaced black between the trees as I picked my way back toward the tower, jumping at every snapped twig and rustle of leaves. The path looked different in dawn light, less threatening but no less foreign. My watch read 5:42 a.m. when I spotted the tower up ahead against the brightening sky. I stumbled up the last flight of stairs to the tower, my legs burning from my rushed return through strange terrain. The door was still open, just like I'd left it when I ran away. No noose, nothing hanging from the central beam. My backpack hit the floor with a thud. I checked the ceiling again, running my hand along the smooth wood where the rope had swung hours earlier. Not even a scratch marked the surface. The beam felt cool and solid against my palm, just regular wood. Where the hell did it go? My voice sounded wrong in the empty cabin, too small. I searched every corner of the room, under the bed, behind the radio equipment, inside cabinets. Nothing. No hemp fibers, no rope fragments. Like it never existed. But I'd seen it. Felt how scary that swinging noose was in the moonlight. Sunlight now came through the eastern windows, lighting up the dust floating in the air. The normal morning sounds of birds and distant wind should have been comforting. They weren't. I pulled out my notebook and started writing, my hand cramping from pressing too hard against the paper. 3:17 a.m. Woke to noise on roof. Found noose hanging from central beam. Ran from tower. Met woman at Whisper Creek. Woman knew my name. Spoke with multiple voices. Claimed the noose was her gift. Disappeared without walking away. Returned to tower at dawn. Noose gone. The facts looked ridiculous on paper, like someone had lost their mind from being alone too long. I almost crossed them out, but instead closed the notebook and tucked it into my pocket. Coffee helped. 2 cups, black and bitter, while I waited for 8 o'clock check-in. The routine felt important now, something real to hold on to while everything else was getting weird. The radio crackled at 8 sharp. Morning check-in, Eagle Point. Eagle Point checking in, I said. All normal here. Copy that. Clear skies today, low fire risk, dispatch out. If only they knew. I pulled on my boots and headed outside. The cold morning air hit my face, which helped wake me up after a night of no sleep. I needed to check around the tower, look for evidence, footprints, anything. I only saw my own boot prints from yesterday at the base. I checked farther out, walking in a slow circle about 20 yards from the tower. I didn't notice anything weird until I got to the northwestern corner. Stones. 7 of them in a perfect circle about 2 feet across. Small, flat river rocks piled too high at even spaces around the circle. A bigger kind of triangle-shaped rock was in the middle. Those stones weren't there yesterday. I had walked around this place many times during my watch shifts. The dirt around the stones looked smooth, with no footprints going to or coming from the circle. I took my camera out of my pocket. I snapped pictures from every angle, making sure to get the tower in some shots for reference. The stones looked like someone put them there on purpose, like some kind of marker. Back inside, I reached for the radio. This had gone far enough. Eagle Point to dispatch. Come in. Static then. Dispatch receiving. Go ahead. I need to speak with the chief supervisor, please. Matters urgent. A pause. Stand by. 2 minutes later, a deeper voice came through. Supervisor Thompson here. What's the situation, Eagle Point? I took a breath. Sir, I'm requesting an early end to my assignment. Family emergency. Not exactly true, but close enough. My sanity counted as family. I see. The supervisor's voice remained neutral. Can you provide any details? Just got word that my father's health has taken a turn. Need to get back as soon as possible. The lie came easier than expected. Another pause stretched out. I understand your situation, Wilson. Unfortunately, we're short-handed across the entire region. Earliest we could get a replacement to you would be 4 days from now. My grip tightened on the handset. 4 days. That's correct. We can have a helicopter at your location Friday morning. Would that work for your circumstances? 4 more nights in this tower. 4 more chances to wake to a noose or worse. But what choice did I have? That'll work. Thank you, sir. We'll log your request. Keep to standard protocols until then. Supervisor out. The radio went silent. I set it down and stared at the calendar tacked beside the window. Monday now. 4 days until Friday. Just had to survive until then. I needed to protect myself. I spent the next hour checking every window latch, testing the door hinges, and looking at the floor hatch that led to the stairs. I had to secure every possible way in. The gear closet had a coil of steel equipment wire, the kind used for weather instruments. Perfect. I cut pieces with my multi-tool and made extra locks for the windows, wrapping wire through the latches and around the frames. Not pretty, but it worked. The door got the same treatment, wire threaded through the handle and secured to metal brackets on the wall. Anything trying to enter would make noise. Lots of it. By late afternoon, I'd turned the cabin into something like a fortress. Not good enough to stop whatever had put those stones outside, especially if it could make a noose appear and disappear. But better than nothing. I noticed movement through the south window. A group of deer, 5 or 6, had come out from the trees into the small clearing below. They ate peacefully, heads dipping to pull at grass. Normal forest stuff, until it wasn't. Every deer head snapped up at once, ears forward, bodies tense. I couldn't hear anything that might have scared them. Then they all ran back into the trees at once, gone in seconds. The birds went quiet next. Their constant background noise, so common I'd stopped noticing it, just stopped. The forest was completely still. No bird sounds, no rustling leaves, no distant calls of hawks or ravens. Something was coming. The sun was setting and made the walls look red as I finished my final preparations. I filled my water bottle and put it in my chosen corner. I tested the flashlight and kept spare batteries nearby. The radio was within reach. The fire axe from its emergency case now sat across my knees. I turned off the lights when it got dark. Better to see out than be seen inside. The cabin got really dark, and I sat in the northeastern corner. From there, I could watch both the door and most of the windows. Time dragged on. My watch ticked past 9, then 10. The moon came up, making bright spots on the floor where its light came through between my wire reinforcements. The radio crackled at 11:17, not the clean signal of an official broadcast, just white noise with something underneath. I turned the volume up. Whispers. Too faint to make out words, but definitely human sounds beneath the static. The voice, if it was a voice, rose and fell in patterns that almost formed sentences. "Who's there?" I asked, knowing protocol required identifying myself first. Not caring. The whispers continued, independent of my question, like a recording playing on loop rather than a response. I set the radio down but kept it close. More hours went by. My eyes burned from staring into darkness. Every creak of the tower settling made me tighten my grip on the axe. My watch displayed 12 o'clock when the radio crackled again. This time the static cleared immediately. "Dispatch to Eagle Point, emergency situation. Come in." The supervisor's voice came through crisp and clear. I grabbed the handset. "Eagle Point receiving. Go ahead. We have a distress call from 3 miles northwest of your position. Hiker with a broken leg. Needs immediate assistance." My mouth went dry. Dispatch. I'm not qualified for... You're the only personnel within reach. The injured party can't be moved without help, and night temperatures will drop below safe levels." The voice paused. "Basic medical kit should be in your emergency supplies. GPS coordinates coming through now." The radio beeped as numbers appeared on its small display screen. "Can you confirm receipt of coordinates?" the supervisor asked. I looked at the numbers and got nervous. 3 miles northwest, middle of the night, after everything I'd seen. "Eagle Point, do you copy? Injured hiker needs immediate assistance." The axe felt heavy across my knees. "Copy that," I finally said. "Coordinates received. Report back when you've made contact. Dispatch out." The radio went silent, leaving me alone with the decision I didn't want to make. I grabbed my emergency kit and GPS, shoving both into my pack alongside a full water bottle and spare batteries. The coordinates from dispatch glowed on the small screen, 3 miles northwest through unmarked forest. In the dark. Someone needed help. That much hadn't changed. I slung the pack over my shoulders, clicked on my flashlight, and started down the stairs. The beam cut a white path through blackness, hitting tree trunks and bushes really clearly. Everything looked weird at night. Normal shapes looked strange in the dark. It was super quiet as I walked, my boots crunching on dead leaves and fallen branches. No birds, no insects. Nothing but the sound of my own breath and footsteps. The GPS beeped softly, guiding me northwest. Each step took me farther from the safety of the tower, deeper into woods that felt like something was watching me. My hand kept brushing the knife at my belt, checking it was still there. Fat lot of good it would do against whatever had been happening, but its weight helped. An hour in, I stopped to check my bearings. The display showed me closing in on the coordinates, maybe half a mile left. The moon was higher now, giving enough light to see the general shape of the land. A downward slope led toward what looked like a small clearing ahead. "Hello?" I called. "Forest Service. Anyone there?" My voice disappeared into the trees. No answer. The GPS beeped faster as I got to the last 100 yards. I moved my flashlight back and forth, looking for any sign of the injured hiker. Nothing moved. No tent, no equipment, no person. Then the light hit something that didn't look right. A patch of dirt, darker than the rest, recently dug up. The soil had been turned over and roughly put back, not packed down properly. Next to it, a pile of rocks sat ready but unused. My throat closed up. That wasn't a campsite. The smell hit me next. Sweet, sour, and unmistakable, even in the cool night air. Death has a scent you don't forget. I walked slowly, keeping the flashlight pointed at the dug-up ground. One end of the shallow pit had caved in, showing what was underneath. A hand, gray-white in the light, fingers curled like pale spiders against the dirt. Part of an arm. The edge of a tan jacket sleeve. My stomach heaved. I turned away, swallowing acid. The reported injured hiker didn't exist. This was a body. A dead body. After catching my breath, I made myself look again. The cave-in had shown more than just the arm. Part of the shoulder and head were visible now. The face lay half-turned toward me, features messed up by trauma and starting to decay. Nose crushed, one eye socket empty, cheek caved in with bone showing through. I couldn't tell who it was, not for certain, but the jacket matched what Stephen had worn. "This can't be happening," I muttered, my voice small against the night. Something red blinked in my peripheral vision. I swung the flashlight toward it. A small trail camera strapped to a pine tree about 15 feet from the grave. Its recording light pulsed steadily. I stepped closer to check it out. Standard game camera, weatherproof case, motion activated. The kind hunters use to track animal movements, or poachers. With shaking hands, I unstrapped it from the tree. The memory card was still inside. Whatever had happened here, this camera had recorded it. I returned to the shallow grave, bracing myself for a closer look. The exposed hand showed days of exposure, skin slipping, nails blue-black. This death wasn't recent, at least 3 days old, maybe more. Using a stick, I carefully moved some soil away from the jacket pocket closest to the surface. Something metallic reflected my light. I knelt and eased it out. A hunting knife in a leather sheath. High quality, illegal on these protected lands. More digging revealed a coil of thin wire, snare wire, the tools of a poacher. I sat back on my heels, trying to make sense of it all. The distress call, the body, the camera, none of it fit together in a way my mind wanted to accept. The radio. I needed to report this. Eagle Point to dispatch, emergency. I waited, hearing only faint static. Eagle Point to dispatch, come in. The static got louder but didn't make any words or give a response. Just white noise filling the clearing. Dispatch, do you copy? I found a body at the GPS coordinates, not an injured hiker. Repeat, there's a dead body here. Nothing. The channel remained open but empty of human voice. The camera in my hand suddenly felt important, maybe the only evidence of what had happened. I slipped it into my pack and marked the location on my GPS. Whatever was going on, I needed to get back to the tower and try different frequencies. Call for real help. I took one last look at the partial face showing through the dirt. Something nagged at me, something about the way the jaw was set, the shape of what remained. But in that state, I couldn't be sure of anything. The journey back stretched longer than the hike out. Each step felt heavier, my awareness of the forest around me painfully sharp. The darkness between trees seemed deeper, solid. The flashlight beam couldn't penetrate more than 20 feet ahead. Halfway back, I heard it. Footsteps, not mine. A second set, slightly out of sync, coming from somewhere behind. I froze, listening hard. The sound stopped when I did. Hello? My voice cracked. Nothing moved. Even the air seemed still. I walked again. The footsteps resumed, light, almost matching my pace, but not quite. Like someone trying to cover their tracks by stepping when I stepped, but missing the timing. I spun around, sweeping the light in a wide arc. Empty forest stretched in all directions. The footsteps ceased. 10 minutes later, it happened again. This time I didn't stop or call out. I just walked faster, my hand tight around the knife handle. The tower appeared through the trees, windows dark against the night sky. 300 yards to go. 200. Movement flickered between distant pines, a flash of white that caught the edge of my light beam. A figure, female, with long dark hair. The same woman from the creek. I swung the flashlight directly at her. The beam hit empty space. Just trees and shadows where she'd stood a moment before. I broke into a run, racing through the last 100 yards. The stairs stood ahead. Safety, or what passed for it these days. I took the stairs 2 at a time, lungs burning as I reached the top landing. The tower door stood open as I'd left it. Inside, I dropped my pack on the floor and pulled out the trail camera, my fingers struggling with the USB cord. The laptop booted up as I wiped sweat from my face, trying to make my hands stop shaking. The connector kept missing the port, tapping against metal until I steadied my wrist and forced it in. The camera's red light blinked twice, then stayed solid. Connected. The screen flickered as the file browser opened. One folder labeled DCM0142 held dozens of video files, each named with dates and timestamps. I clicked on the oldest, from 3 days ago. The video player opened, showing a patch of forest in daylight. Nothing moved except branches in the wind. I fast-forwarded through hours of empty woods. Occasionally, a deer would wander past, nose to the ground. A fox trotted through once, stopping to mark its territory against a fallen log. Normal forest scenes, until they weren't. At 4:17 p.m., a figure entered the frame from the left. Stephen. The tan jacket and dark pants matched what he'd worn to my tower. He carried a small pack, from which he pulled out coils of wire and metal stakes, poaching equipment. I watched as he set traps with obvious experience, hiding them under leaves and against game trails. His movements were quick, confident. He'd done this many times before. The camera caught his face clearly when he turned to check his surroundings. The same face that had appeared at my door asking weird questions about voices in the woods. The timestamp showed the afternoon before he'd visited me. More footage followed. Stephen checking other traps, collecting a dead rabbit from one, resetting the mechanism. The sun lowered in the frame until dusk made the images grainy. Night vision kicked in, turning everything green-tinted and ghostly. I almost missed the next part. My finger hovered over the fast-forward button when movement flickered at the edge of the frame. Someone else had entered the clearing. The figure approached slowly from behind Stephen, who was kneeling to set another trap. When Stephen stood and turned, the camera caught his startled expression. Then it caught the face of his visitor. Mine. But I had no memory of being there. The laptop screen showed me confronting Stephen, my mouth moving in what looked like angry speech. No audio came with the footage, but Stephen's body language changed from surprise to defensiveness. He pointed at his traps, then pointed toward what must have been the direction of the tower. "That's not possible," I whispered to the empty room. But there I was, arguing with a man I'd later find buried in a shallow grave. The timestamp showed 9:42 p.m. I tried desperately to remember where I'd been 3 nights ago at that time. In the tower, asleep. The days had blurred together since I'd arrived. The argument on screen escalated. Stephen stepped toward me, jabbing a finger at my chest. I stepped back, then the change was instantaneous. My body on screen went rigid. My expression emptied completely, face slack like a doll's, and I bent down, picked up a rock the size of a grapefruit, and swung it. The first blow caught Stephen on the temple. He staggered backward, hands raised. The second blow knocked him to his knees. The third, I couldn't watch, but couldn't look away either. The rock rose and fell, my arm moving with mechanical precision, my face showing nothing. No anger, no horror, nothing at all. "Jesus Christ," I breathed, bile rising in my throat. That's when I saw her. She was at the far edge of the frame, barely showing up in the night vision green. The woman from the creek. Her long hair didn't move at all, even though the breeze was moving the leaves around her. She watched the attack with a blank face, her head tilted at that weird angle. The footage kept going after the attack ended. Stephen wasn't moving. I dropped the rock and just stood there like someone had turned me off. The woman came closer, walking in that same creepy way I'd seen at the creek. She looked like she was talking, but her mouth hardly moved. The me on screen nodded and bent down to grab Stephen's ankles. The last few minutes showed me dragging the body across the clearing, out of the camera's view. The woman followed, then completely vanished. The me on screen came back alone, picked up the rock and what looked like Stephen's knife, then walked out of frame toward the tower. The video stopped. It was so quiet as I looked at the black screen. My reflection stared back, pale, eyes wide open, looking totally freaked out. I played the next file, and the one after that, looking for any other footage of me or the woman. There was nothing. Just empty forest going back to normal after someone had died there. I shut the laptop and put it down very carefully. Then I looked at my clothes, the same jacket I'd been wearing for days. The sleeves looked clean, but something made me check the inside of the right cuff. There it was, a spray of dark brown dots and smears hidden in the fold of the fabric. Dried blood. Not mine. I tore the jacket off and threw it across the room. It hit the wall and fell to the floor in a heap. The stain looked darker than the rest of the fabric in the dim light. My hands felt all over my pants, searching for more evidence. Nothing obvious showed on the dark fabric, but when I held the pant legs up to the light, I could see spots where something had dried and made the fabric stiff. The boots came next. I pulled them off and turned them over. Dark stuff was packed in the treads, mud mixed with something darker. I scraped at it with a knife from the kitchen drawer, watching bits fall to the floor. Some were rust-colored. "I didn't do this," I said aloud. I couldn't have, but the evidence said otherwise. The video showed my hands, my face, my body committing murder, and here was the blood to prove it. I grabbed the radio, desperate for any connection to the outside world. "Eagle Point to dispatch emergency." Static answered, hissing like distant rain. "Eagle Point to dispatch. Anyone receiving? I need immediate assistance." More static, then a change in the sound. A rhythmic quality entered the white noise, rising and falling. It took me seconds to recognize what I was hearing. Laughter. A woman's laughter buried in the static. Soft at first, then louder, drowning out the background hiss. I switched channels. "Eagle Point to any Forest Service personnel. Emergency situation. Please respond." The laughter followed, jumping frequencies with me. It filled the small speaker, then dropped to a whisper directly into my ear. "They can't hear you." I threw the radio down. It bounced on the floor, the battery pack popping loose and sliding under the bed. The laughing stopped. 5 more attempts with the put-back-together radio gave me the same results. Each frequency I tried carried only her laughter and occasional whispered words, too quiet to make out clearly. No one was coming. No one could hear me. The nearest ranger station was 12 miles southeast, according to my maps. On foot, crossing rough terrain, it would take at least a day, maybe more. I pulled my backpack from under the bed and emptied it on the floor. Unnecessary items made a discard pile. Books, spare clothes, toiletries. Essentials went back in. Water filter, first aid kit, knife, flashlight with extra batteries, GPS unit, fire starter, emergency blanket, 3 protein bars. The laptop with the camera footage went in last, wrapped in a t-shirt for protection. Whatever happened next, I needed that evidence. It might be the only thing between me and a murder charge, or proof I'd lost my mind entirely. I changed into my last clean shirt and a spare pair of hiking pants. The boots went back on. I had no other footwear. I'd have to hope no one looked at the treads too closely. Water next. I filled 2 bottles and attached them to the pack's side pockets. The weight felt good, solid. Taking action felt better than being frozen by fear. "Get to the ranger station," I muttered as I worked. "Show them the footage. Explain what happened." Except I had no explanation. I couldn't say anything without sounding like I was making up lies or completely losing my mind. Woman in the woods controlling my actions? Face-changing visitors who'd been dead for years? I sounded crazy even to myself. But the footage didn't lie. Something had happened. Something beyond normal explanation. And I needed help before it happened again. Pack secured, I took one last look around the tower. After just weeks, I got used to it. The creaky floorboards, the sunlight on the map table, the small scratches left by people who stayed here before me. Now it felt strange again, unwelcoming. I reached for the door handle. Every window in the tower slammed shut at once. The glass rattled in the frames, wood hitting wood hard enough to make the whole structure shake. The door ripped itself from my grip and crashed closed, the lock clicking into place. I stood frozen in the sudden silence, hand still outstretched toward where the doorknob had been. The sound faded away to nothing. "No," I whispered. Then louder, "No!" I rushed to the nearest window, fingers scrabbling at the latch. It wouldn't budge. I tried another, then another, all locked tight, as if welded shut. The door handle refused to turn under my grip. I threw my shoulder against the wood, once, twice, 3 times. Not even a crack. The simple structure had turned impenetrable. The laptop chimed from my backpack, a low battery warning. Or something else. I didn't check. I stood in the center of the tower room, a cold weight settling in my stomach as I realized the truth. She wasn't letting me leave. I grabbed the wooden chair from beside the map table and hurled it at the largest window. The glass exploded outward in a shower of glittering shards. Cool night air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine and wet earth. Freedom. The jagged edges of the broken window frame tore at my jacket as I squeezed through. My boots crunched on fallen glass. Just a few more inches and I'd be outside. I could run. She stood directly in front of me, not on the catwalk where a person should have been, but floating in the air, her feet a good 2 feet above the platform. The woman from the creek, from the video, from my nightmares. "James Wilson," she said, my name splitting into harmonies as multiple voices spoke through her mouth. I froze half in, half out of the window. The broken glass bit into my palms. My legs dangled like dead weight. "You've served me well already," she continued, "but we have much more to discuss." Her face began to change. The pale, almost human features stretched, jaw extending downward like melting wax. The skin split along invisible seams, revealing a second mouth beneath, wider, filled with needle-like teeth arranged in multiple rows. Her eyes expanded until they consumed most of her forehead, the pupils elongating to vertical slits. Her arms lengthened, joints bending at impossible angles as fingers sprouted additional knuckles, stretching into talons. The white dress I'd seen before now looked like part of her body, moving and rippling with a life of its own. "I am Sophia," she said, the name reverberating through her distorted mouth. "And these woods have been mine since before your kind knew fire." I scrambled backward, cutting my hands on more glass as I retreated into the tower. My back hit the map table, trapped again. Sophia flowed through the broken window without touching the frame, her body compressing and expanding in ways that denied physics. Inside the tower, she stood taller, her head nearly brushing the ceiling. "You've been chosen," she said. "Few are worthy of selection. Many pass through these woods, but not all have the qualities I require in my guardians." The word guardians echoed in the small room. I swallowed against a desert-dry throat. "I didn't kill anyone," I said, my voice thin and unconvincing even to my own ears. "That wasn't me on the video." Sophia's lipless mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "It was your body, your hands. I merely borrowed them for a time. Stephen, I managed. The man in the grave. A desecrator," she hissed, multiple voices turning harsh. 10 years he set his traps in my domain. 10 years he took my creatures for profit and sport. His time was due. I inched sideways along the table, eyes never leaving her. "Why me? Why make me do it?" She flowed closer, her movements liquid and wrong. "I require guardians to maintain my boundaries, to enforce my will when flesh-bound intervention is needed." "But why not kill him yourself?" The question spilled out before I could consider whether challenging her was wise. Sophia's vertical pupils dilated. "Death alone provides limited nourishment. Fear and moral corruption, the breaking of a human conscience, that sustains me far longer." The implications hit me like a physical blow. She'd made me kill not just to get rid of Stephen, but because my horror and guilt afterward fed her somehow. "The Stephen you met here, who visited you," she continued, "was but an echo, a tool I crafted from your perceptions and his lingering presence. The real Stephen Miller died years ago, hanging from that beam." She pointed upward with an elongated finger. "You made me hallucinate him. I shaped your perception, as I have done with many before you." My back found the corner of the room, nowhere left to retreat. "How many?" I asked. "How many lookouts have you used?" "Since humans began watching these woods, dozens." Her head tilted at that impossible angle I'd seen at the creek. "Some serve willingly, understanding the honor bestowed upon them. Others require convincing. Like the Stephen from 1997? I remembered what Nate had told me. He killed himself rather than serve you." Something flashed across her inhuman features, anger or perhaps respect. He refused to eliminate a group of hunters I had marked, chose his own death instead. A rare decision. I gathered what courage remained. I choose that too, then. I won't kill for you. Sophia made a sound like winter wind through dry leaves. Laughter. You misunderstand your position. She raised one elongated hand, palm toward me. Allow me to demonstrate. My muscles locked instantly. Every fiber went rigid, as if turned to stone. I couldn't move my arms, legs, not even my fingers. Only my eyes remained under my control, darting frantically as panic surged through my immobilized body. Your movement, your speech, your very thoughts, all can be governed by my will. She closed her hand slowly, and my throat constricted in response. Breathing became difficult, then impossible. Black spots danced at the edges of my vision. Just before consciousness faded, she released me. I collapsed to the floor, sucking air into burning lungs. The choice is not whether to serve, Sophia said above me. The choice is whether to serve willingly, with your mind intact, or to become nothing more than a vessel for my intentions. I pushed myself to my hands and knees, still gasping. Why even offer a choice? Why not just control me completely? An aware servant notices things a puppet cannot, provides insights, makes connections. She circled me, her movements fluid and predatory. And willingness sweetens the arrangement. You're talking about decades of servitude, I said, my voice hoarse, killing who knows how many people. Not decades, a lifetime. Sophia's many-voiced speech softened, and not countless deaths, simply specific ones when necessary. Those who threaten my domain, those who take without reverence. She gestured, and the air before us shimmered. Images formed, faces of men and women wearing the uniforms of fire lookouts from different eras. Some appeared peaceful, others twisted in expressions of agony. These chose service, she said, indicating the calm faces. These did not, she added, as the tormented ones came into focus. All served regardless. The images shifted, showing me flashes of what those people experienced. The willing servants lived largely normal lives, returning to the tower periodically to perform tasks for Sophia. The unwilling, their existence became an unending nightmare of physical pain and mental torture, puppets with just enough awareness to suffer. The choice is yours, James Wilson, Sophia said, the vision fading. Serve me with your faculties intact, or resist and lose yourself entirely. I hauled myself to my feet, legs trembling with the effort. And if I agree, what exactly do you want me to do? Her inhuman face revealed nothing. Protect my domain, eliminate those who would damage it beyond necessity. Continue your life otherwise as you see fit. For how long? Until I release you, or until death finds you naturally. The broken window beckoned, the night air, a desperate chance at escape. But her display of power left little doubt she could stop me instantly if I tried. I need time, I said, to think. Time is something I have in abundance, Sophia replied. Until morning, then. She began to fade, her form growing transparent. Remember, James Wilson, I am always watching, always listening, and your actions at the grave have already bound you to me more than you know. Then she was gone, leaving me alone in the tower with the cold wind blowing through the broken window and the weight of an impossible choice crushing down on me. I stayed in the tower, eyes fixed on the empty space where Sophia had been. My answer wasn't complicated. I just didn't want to die, not like that. Not as her puppet. I'll do it, I said to the empty room. I'll serve. No response came, but the temperature warmed slightly. The next morning, the broken window had repaired itself, glass intact, frame unscratched, as if I'd imagined throwing the chair. By afternoon, the ranger's dispatch had promised finally arrived, 2 men with rifles and serious expressions who asked about the missing hiker I'd reported. False alarm, I told them. Guy turned up with a different group, radio miscommunication. They looked relieved. One less problem in their day. Neither noticed my hands shaking as I offered them coffee. "We'll check the area you mentioned anyway," the older one said. I nodded like I had nothing to hide. They returned the next morning, reporting they'd found nothing. No grave, no body, no disturbed earth. I feigned confusion while my stomach twisted. Sophia had cleaned up after me. The rest of the summer passed in rigid routine. I made my reports, manned my post, and kept the forest safe from fires. Sometimes at night, I felt her watching from the trees. Sometimes I heard her many-voiced whispers through the radio static. "The poacher would have set 20 more traps this month," she said once. 3 bears and a wolf pack would have died slowly, painfully. I didn't answer. It didn't make me feel better about the blood on my hands. When my rotation ended, a helicopter picked me up where I'd started 3 months earlier. The ride down from the mountain brought no relief. I kept expecting to look out the window and see her floating alongside us, keeping pace. Back in the city, I tried rebuilding my life. I showed up at my old apartment, called friends I'd neglected, smiled through questions about my summer, told stories about wildlife and weather and the peaceful isolation, lied through my teeth. One night, drunk and desperate, I tried telling my best friend what had happened. "There's something I need to..." My throat closed mid-sentence. Not metaphorically, actually closed, cutting off all air. My hands clawed at my neck while my friend stared in confusion. When I stopped trying to speak about the tower, about Sophia, about the killing, my airway reopened. I tried writing it down instead. My fingers cramped and twisted until I dropped the pen. I tried typing an email. My computer crashed, erasing the draft. I tried recording myself. The file corrupted. She'd covered all exits. 3 months after my return, I woke at 3:17 a.m. A rope hung from my bedroom ceiling, noose end dangling above my bed. Sophia sat at my kitchen table, looking human except for her eyes. She wore jeans and a sweater like a normal woman, but the borrowed costume only made her wrongness more apparent. "You've adjusted well," she said, her multi-layered voice now contained in a whisper. I stood in my doorway, one hand gripping the frame. "What do you want now?" "To explain your service terms." She gestured to the chair across from her. I didn't sit. "You'll live your life as you choose most days. But each year, you'll return to the tower for 1 week. During that week, you'll perform one task for me." "What kind of task?" Her smile stretched too wide. "Similar to your first. Those who damage my domain require correction." "You want me to kill someone every year?" My voice sounded flat, empty. "Not every year, only when needed." She tilted her head that impossible way. "Your first assignment comes soon. A man named Edward Klein has been hunting with poison in my northern woods, targeting predators, wolves, bears, mountain lions." She placed a photograph on the table, a middle-aged man with a weather-beaten face and hard eyes. "You will contact him. Tell him you're a guide who knows where a pack of wolves dens. Offer to take him there." I stared at the photo, nausea rising. "And if I refuse?" Pain exploded behind my eyes, white-hot needles drilling through my skull. My knees buckled. I screamed until my voice broke. "That," Sophia said calmly as the pain receded, "will continue until you comply. The longer you resist, the worse it becomes." I pushed myself up from the floor, tasting blood where I'd bitten my cheek. "You're going to make me do this for the rest of my life?" "Yes." No pretense. No false comfort. Just truth. I found Edward Klein 2 weeks later, made contact at a bar where hunters gathered, fed him the story Sophia had prepared, watched his eyes light up with cruel anticipation, led him into the woods where she waited. I still hear his screams when I close my eyes. I tried running the next year, packed up and moved across the country. Found an apartment in Boston, about as far from wilderness as I could get. For 6 months, I thought it had worked. Then I woke to the noose above my bed and Sophia sitting in my new kitchen. "It's time to return to the tower," she said. I tried therapy, found a psychiatrist specializing in trauma and delusions. Dr. Mercer listened patiently to the sanitized version of my story, the only version I could physically tell, about recurring nightmares and feeling controlled by an external force. He prescribed medications. None helped. During our 8th session, he leaned forward with new intensity. "James, I think we're making progress. There's something unusual about your brain scans." The next week, Dr. Mercer didn't remember me. His receptionist had no record of my appointments. My file had vanished. I tried a priest next. Father Collins heard my confession, again, the version I could actually speak, and offered prayers for protection. When I returned the following week, a different priest told me Father Collins had taken an unexpected leave of absence. No forwarding address. 5 years into my servitude, I tried the final escape. Parked my car in a closed garage, started the engine, sat back and closed my eyes. I woke on the floor of my apartment with Sophia standing over me. "That option isn't available to you," she said. The years blurred together. I aged. My hair grayed, then thinned. Lines mapped my face. I built a life in the spaces between her summons. A job I could leave for annual vacations. An apartment I never fully decorated. Friends I never got too close to. I performed her tasks, each one leaving another scar on whatever remained of my soul. 27 years after that first summer, I climbed the tower steps for what I somehow knew would be my final visit. My knees protested each step. My breath came shorter than it once had. The cabin looked exactly the same, preserved in time while I had withered, the map table, the radio, the central beam where a noose had once hung. Sophia appeared as night fell, still unchanged, still wrong in ways that never stopped disturbing me. "Your service has been adequate," she said. "Is it over?" Hope flickered, fragile and probably foolish. "For you, nearly. But the forest requires constant protection." She gestured toward the north window. Through my binoculars, I spotted headlights winding up the maintenance road, someone arriving a day early for the next rotation. 24 years old, Sophia said. Daniel Morris, forestry degree. No family connections. No one to miss him for 3 months. The headlights stopped at the base of the tower. A car door slammed. "Your final task is simple," she continued. "Break him. Make him receptive to my offer. Your experience makes you uniquely qualified. You want me to help you trap someone else." The words tasted bitter. "Start the whole cycle over again." Yes. Steps sounded on the stairs below. Young, energetic steps. "And if I warn him instead?" I asked. "Tell him to run?" Sophia's many-voiced laugh filled the small room. "You've seen my reach, James Wilson. There is nowhere he could hide that I wouldn't find him. The only difference would be the suffering involved, his and yours." A knock echoed from the door. "The choice, as always, is yours," she said, fading into shadow. "Choose wisely." The knock came again. I crossed to the door and placed my hand on the knob, feeling the cool metal against my palm. On the other side stood a young man about to step into the same nightmare I had lived for nearly 3 decades. I turned the handle and opened the door.